Okay, so we got this 2004 Honda Element in here. I took it for a little test drive. It's got two codes. It's got a p0325 and a p0325. Knock sensor 1, no signal, and a misfire number 3. I'm not real worried about the misfire number 3. I took this for a ride, drove about 15-20 minutes down the highway. I don't feel any misfires at all. And I think if the knock sensor is not working or there's no signal, the computer's going to pick up on that and possibly cause a misfire. So that's the direction I'm going to go. Is I'm going to try to address this one first, this knock signal. And the other thing, when I drove it, I had the knock monitor or the misfire monitor on while I was driving it. And every once in a while, if I was under high load, if I'd floor it or really lay into the engine, it would get a misfire number 3 or number 1. And then it would go away. Like, it would actually erase that misfire from the memory. And I don't think, like I said, if it was fuel injector or coil or spark plug or something like that, I don't think it would erase that from the memory. I think this is something to do with the knock sensor. And so I'm going to go after that first. And anyway, I think on these elements, it's way down in the engine. You can get to it from the bottom, but I really can't. Not with hands like this, So I'm going to pull this manifold off and get access to it. And then we'll check continuity on it and do a few checks on it and make sure the wiring's good on it. I'm pretty confident. This car's got about 170,000 on it. And from what I understand, these Hondas had a problem with the pigtail at some point or another. So we'll check that out real good and check the knock sensor. And we'll probably end up replacing it. Like I said, you could probably get to it from underneath. But I'm not going to fight it. I think I can get this manifold off faster and have plenty of room there to test everything without fighting it. Because there's very, very little, I can barely even get my hand there to touch it. So Honda didn't make it easy on these with the knock sensor. So anyway, we'll get started on it. And we'll do some tests on it and see what happens. Alright, so I got the knock sensor out, and I got the new knock sensor and the old knock sensor side by side. This is on channel 1 on the scope. This is on channel 2 of the scope. I got it in this vise. It's not very tight at all, just to hold it in there basically. I want to show you the different waveforms between the good one. Now, like I said, the good one is number 1 down here, and the waveform for the bad one will be up here. And when I say bad, everything checks out on it, but for whatever reason, the car is not liking the signal it's sending back. So I kind of want to show you what I found with the scope here. If I just, if you just tap on the vise like that, just like you're simulating a detonation or a ping on the engine, and watch the waveforms on these. You can see on the bad one, there's huge spikes, and then it flatlines for a while, huge spikes. And on the good one, it's real steady all the way across. You see how steady that waveform is on the good one, the new one, and then it's so it drops in and out on this bottom, on the top, not on the top. It drops in and out on the old one on channel 2 there. All I'm doing is just tapping on this to simulate the knock. So anyway, you can see how much that the bad one drops in and out, and the wild spikes, whereas the new one is pretty uniform across. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and change the sensor on it. The wiring to the sensor, down to the sensor, looked fine. I tested it. So anyway, I think it's safe to call the sensor on this, and just use a scope here to kind of test it out and see, what it looks like as far as a waveform. So we'll go and and these Hondas are not very easy to get the knock sensor, so you want to be sure before you do too much work on them. So anyway, we'll get back to it. All right, so you can see here I took the manifold loose. I don't have it completely off. And I pulled it back. That's all you need to get your arm in there. You can get it from the bottom. Like I said, I'm not going to fight that. So you got the 2 upper, then you got some lower ones, and that's all you. And then there's a bracket that goes down. That's all you really got to do to pull this back. And you don't have to unplug anything really. just to pull it back. So anyway, to me it's easier, especially if you got big hands or arms or whatever. It's easier to do that than try to fight that. So anyway, so we'll put the new sensor in. I'm going to reach down in there and put that in, screw it on, put the connector back on, and then we'll put this back on and take it for a test drive and see if we get any more codes for the knock sensor or any misfire counts. Like I said, if I would really lay into the engine under load, it would count up a couple of misfires and they would disappear after a few minutes. So we'll see if it does that and if the concern's fixed at this point. All right, so you can just kind of see the tip of it way down there, that black tip. That's the actual sensor right there. It's tightened in. Like I said, you might be able to get to it from the bottom. The frame goes right there, and there's all kinds of things in the way. You can get your hand. I can feel it, but I just can't get my hands too big to get too big of a grip. So like I said before, I always just pull this manifold back a little. But that's where it's at. You can see it from below a little easier. But getting your hand there's another story. Honda definitely does not make it easy to change these knock sensors as far as the location. So I'll just plug that in and then we'll put this manifold back on. Alright, so it's going to be a little shaky, but here's kind of the bottom picture of it. It's right there. You can see you got the water neck and then the starter right there. And then you have to deal with this frame, which is right here. So there's not a lot of room underneath to get to it, but just wanted to kind of show you where it really is underneath it. You have to take the bottom guard, big plastic guard off to get to it. Alright, so I got it all installed. I'm going to take it for a ride. I got the cylinder misfires loaded up on the auto. Before, if you put under severe load or really lay into it, it would count a few misfires and then it would disappear after a little bit. So I'm going to just take it out for a ride and see. Check engine light was come on and off too occasionally. So I'm going to take it out and see if under load those things count any misfires, and we'll see what happens with that. Alright, so I drove about 15-20 minutes. You can see there's no misfires on it. It didn't record any when I was driving it. So I think I think we're good to go on this. Keep an eye on it. Make sure it doesn't come back on. I didn't clear the codes yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not, or let the computer clear it on its own. But yep, that's what it is for a Honda knock sensor. It's not the most accessible thing in the world on a Honda, but it's not the end of the world either. From what I understand, some of the older models of these elements had software issues with the PCM. So this is an 04, so it's the second year it was out. It's got 170,000 on its first time it's had the check engine light on for that. So we'll see. Keep an eye on it, monitor it, see what happens with it. But I think feel pretty confident right now that it's fixed, especially watching the scope and seeing that thing drop out. That's a pretty good demonstration of the two working side by side. So anyway, got this back here, and we'll get this Hooptie back on the road.